The Chiefs drafted Omar Norman-Lott in the second round of the NFL draft, and so far he has been one of the most impressive players at training camp. In this video, we are going to go over some of the comments made by Lott to the media, go over some realistic expectations, and also talk about where he might fit on this defense. But if you guys are new to this channel, my name is Michael Darcy and you're watching the KC Sports Report. Hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more daily Chiefs coverage. Now, when we talk about players that have impressed in training camp, most of the time you think offensive players, whether it's Justin Ross from the past, or guys like Nico Remigio or Tyquan Thornton, you generally think of an offensive skill player, whether it is a wide receiver, a running back. Pacheco was that guy a couple of years ago. But right now, the guy that I would argue has impressed more than any other defensive player is rookie defensive tackle Omar Norman-Lott. The Chiefs drafted him out of Tennessee in the second round, and right away, I love that pick. I thought that he could be a day one contributor to this defense, a very good Chiefs defense, by the way, that doesn't really need a whole lot of help. They got someone that led college football in pressure rate, and you're adding him to that defense with Chris Jones. And so I automatically thought, okay, that's going to be a very good pairing and has the potential to be, maybe one of the best in the NFL. And so I had a lot of expectations going into the season about Omar Norman-Lott, and so far in training camp, he has primarily been working with the ones. And in fact, the media talked to him about his, role, and he was, talking about going up against Creed Humphrey in practice, and he basically was like, the dude's a brick wall. And Creed Humphrey is the best center in football, and so I can only, assume that going up against that guy in practice every day is only going to make someone like Lott stronger. It's only going to make him better at getting to the quarterback, because if you can consistently beat Creed Humphrey, which not that many defensive tackles can do, you're going to have a very good chance of wreaking havoc on other quarterbacks in the NFL, because not every team has a Creed Humphrey, and definitely not every team has a Chris Jones. And I'm not saying that Omar Norman-Lott is going to come into the NFL and just absolutely, break it. But I do think that if he can give you any supplemental pass rush, that is absolutely a bonus. And I think we're going to probably see Omar Norman-Lott be the, second starting defensive tackle on the opposite side of Chris Jones week one. I think it's basically going to be, a defensive line that's, George Karlaftis on the edge. You're going to have Omar Norman-Lott, Chris Jones, and either, Charles Omenihu, Mike Dana. We haven't really seen much from Ashton Gelati so far in camp, but I do think that Lott is going to be the day one starter. And I've kind of had that, opinion right after the Chiefs drafted him, because, the Chiefs have always been fairly weak at defensive tackle outside of Chris Jones, and that's no slight to Derek Nottie. I think he's a very solid player, but I really do think the hype is real around Omar Norman-Lott. And in fact, ESPN's own Nate Taylor was talking about how Omar Norman-Lott, very similar to Jaden Hicks last year, just fits the part. Like, you knew right away that Jaden Hicks was a player. And guess what? He's probably going to be the starting safety for the Chiefs this year. So Omar Norman-Lott appears to play the part, and I do think he is going to win this job out of camp. And if he can give you any kind of pass rush, that is going to be a massive thing for the Chiefs, defensive line, because they've struggled at times to force pressure and get to the quarterback outside of Chris Jones if he's off the field, or, he's forced to line up outside. If Lott could be a consistent force in the middle, it's just going to make this defensive line better. But I do want to hear from you guys down in the comment section below. What do you think of Omar Norman-Lott and all of his reps with the ones? Like, right now, he is getting a ton of reps with the first team defense. And Steve Spagnuolo doesn't normally give that to a rookie. And so I think the odds that he starts are very, very high. But I do want to hear from you guys down in the comment section below. And I also want to talk about some realistic expectations for Omar Norman-Lott, and we'll do that right after this ad break. This video is sponsored by my great friends over at DM Injury Law. Injured in an accident? You could be entitled to significant compensation, but time is of the essence. Rely on the experienced personal injury attorneys at DM Law, Kansas City and Missouri's top injury law firm. DM Law is a full-service personal injury practice supported by a large team of investigators, case managers, medical record specialists, and more. And best of all, you don't pay unless they win. DM Law operates on a contingency fee basis, so no fees unless they win your case. And they also provide free consultations. So if you've been injured, don't wait. You can contact DM Law today for a free consultation and learn how they can help you pursue the compensation you deserve. Let them handle the fight while you focus on healing. Hurt in a car wreck? Call Mike. Remember, Mike's got this. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisement. Thanks to DM Injury Law for sponsoring this video. Huge thanks to the sponsors that have supported this channel all offseason long. Now, when talking about expectations for Omar Norman-Lott, I think it's tough to look at his potential season and grade it just by sacks, because I think sacks is an important metric, but it's not the end-all be-all. And that's why when the George Karlaftis, debate came out, the 24.5 sacks, is that enough over 3 seasons to justify that contract? And just purely based off sacks, no. You have to put in, pressure rate, for defensive tackle. How are you in the running game? Can you stop the run? Are you a turnstile? What is your skill set? And I do think that Lott is going to primarily be someone that tries to force a little pressure, get to the quarterback. He wasn't really known in college for his run stuffing ability, but I think that if you're going to be a starter, you're going to have to do both. But there's a reason that right now the Chiefs have guys on the roster like Jerry Tillery and Mike Pennel. Mike Pennel can be your run stuffer, and if Omar Norman-Lott is the guy that comes in on, 3rd and 4th down and can, get to the quarterback, apply that pressure, I do think the Chiefs are going to be very rotational with their defensive tackle room. I don't think that Omar Norman-Lott is going to play 90% of the snaps his rookie season. I think the Chiefs have and feel comfortable about the guys they have in their room to do different things. Jerry Tillery is someone that can not only play defensive tackle, but you can also kick him out to edge. But I think that Mike Pennel and, Lott is a very good duo because Pennel can stop the run, and he has done that at a very high level. And I think that Lott is going to bring that pass rush that Tershawn Wharton had last year. And you saw what Tershawn Wharton got paid in free agency. The Chiefs were never going to do that. And so that is the beauty of the NFL draft. The Chiefs went out in a year where they lost their starting defensive tackle opposite of Chris Jones. They drafted his replacement fairly high. And if Omar Norman-Lott ends up being the player that we all think he can be, then Chris Jones is going to have help. For the first time, seemingly in forever, maybe the first time ever, Chris Jones is going to have another guy on the interior that can actually force pressure. The Chiefs tried it with Jarran Reed, and, Derek Nottie was not really a pass rush first guy, but Omar Norman-Lott led all of college football in pressure rating. He can get to the quarterback. And I really like his mentality from the interviews that I've heard and from, the tape that I've seen so far at camp. I really like what he can do. And so I think going forward, he is probably going to be the starting defensive tackle week 1 of the NFL season. And the fact the Chiefs found that guy in the 2nd round after they found Josh Simmons, who's probably also going to start week 1, it's just, if we look back at this draft class in a couple years, if guys stay healthy, if, everything plays out the way that we think that it can, Brett Veach might have just had one of the best drafts that he's ever had. And guess what? That 2022 class of Leo Chenal and George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie, that was pretty damn good. And so I think that almost we need to see what guys are going to end up playing their rookie seasons. But I'm really high on Omar Norman-Lott, and I think that he could be a very good pass rusher in this system. But I do want to hear from you guys down in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts. That's all the time we have in this video. Hit that like button, subscribe for more daily Chiefs content. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching, and as always, go Chiefs.